3:07 in the AM. I'm JM, Jody Macdonald, here with you on FAN. On hold, we've got Rich Mancuso, our weekly sports wrestling expert. Also joining us tonight will be Wade Keller, editor of the Wrestling Torch. So wrestling fans, keep it tuned. A lot going on in the world of wrestling, as a matter of fact, and we'll be discussing it at length for the next hour here on FAN. Take a quick timeout, return, talking grappling on the Fan.
You've been Tony Mac on Sports Radio 66, the Fan, WFAN.
10 after 3 here on FAN. Do you want to know where all the action is all November? Yonkers Raceway is where it's at during the fall pacing series. Get out on Saturday, November 30th, and catch the final of the $200,000 William Horton Memorial Pace. No matter when you go to Yonkers, there's action with harness racing every night, Monday through Saturday, and a full daytime card every Tuesday afternoon. And on the other afternoons, you can bet the flats. That's right. Enjoy the simulcast racing from Aqueduct in the comfort and convenience of Yonkers Raceway. For extra fun, dine trackside at the Empire Terrace Restaurant, where you can catch all the action and have great dinner as well. Remember, Saturday, November 30th, next Saturday, the final of the prize $200,000 William Horton Memorial at Yonkers Raceway, where the action never stops. Gates open at 6:30. Post time, 8 p.m. We go to the post in our wrestling segment. Say good morning to Rich Mancuso. Hello, Richard.
Good morning, Jody, and once again, congratulations.
Thanks. We accept that. And we also say good morning to Wade Keller, editor of the Wrestling Torch. Hi, Wade.
How you doing, Jody?
I'm good. And yourself?
Not too bad.
Wade talked to Richie before we hopped on the air here, and he said WCW might have had the best show that they've had in years with their clash this past Tuesday. Do you agree?
I agree. They had the best show they've had in a couple years, for sure.
With the return of Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, which came as a surprise to, I would guess, most people in the wrestling world, it looks like WCW is back to making a commitment, bringing in some decent price talent, guys with reputations. That's a good sign.
It's a good sign. It sort of fell into their hands with WWF mistreating Steamboat in such a way that he became so almost insulted when it came to just how he wants to be looked at in the future, wearing all that foam dragon outfits that he ended up quitting. And so because the WWF mistreated him so much, he really fell into the free agent market, and WCW was very smart to sign him, because he has been the talk of the wrestling world, just his return and his very impressive showing in that tag match.
Yeah, when he came in, I mean, it was a surprise to everybody, and he just riled up that crowd. I've never seen a WCW crowd get so excited like that in years, and I mean years. Also the fact that I was very surprised, because the last I had contact with Steamboat, which wasn't too long ago, he told me that that was a situation that he could never return to. So what do you know about his return? What do you know about the details of his return?
Well, Steamboat, as it was well documented in a lot of radio shows and newsletters, had a very bad falling out with Jim Herd and World Championship Wrestling in 19, was it 80? It was between 88 or 89. It was August of 88 or 89. I can't remember the year. And he had a contract dispute, as happens in a lot of different sports and entertainment entities. And apparently both Jim Herd and Rick Steamboat were the two negotiating parties, and they came within a few $1,000s of each other, but the egos got involved and neither side would budge. And then when Steamboat finally came back and accepted the offer that was only a couple $1,000s off of his, Jim Herd pulled the offer from the table, cut it drastically, and said, no, that was a one-time offer. You no longer can have it. As a result of that, anytime you would mention Rick Steamboat's name to Jim Herd, Herd would just fume, and his face would turn red, and he didn't want to talk about it because it was pretty embarrassing. And Rick Steamboat, I was the same way. And for somebody like Rick Steamboat, with the pride he takes in his work, to go to the WWF says a lot about what he felt about WCW. Also, as far as his departure goes, then I'll get back to his return. It really set a precedent as far as attitudes go, because Rick Steamboat, when he was with the NWA and WCW for about the 8 months that he was with them, it was August of '89. Now that I think of it, when he was with them for that 8 or 9 months, he did everything the promotion wanted him to do. He was a total company man. unlike somebody like Sting, who's known as being very fussy, very particular, and that sort of thing. And Sting got a contract well over the rate of that Steamboat was offered. So it really set a precedent that you're better off not being a company person and looking out for yourself, because that'll pay off at contract time. Getting back to Steamboat returning, he obviously had no choice of going to other major groups. Global Wrestling Federation is unable to offer. I mean, they had to cancel contracts that were $300 a week guarantees. They're in that much of, their money ties are their money is very tight right now. So with Rick Steamboat, if he wanted to regain any pride, because I believe he really felt it was damaged, and in talking with Bonnie, his wife, very briefly a couple weeks ago, that was definitely the case. Steamboat felt really bad about the way he was portrayed and the lack of ability he was able to show in the openers against Skinner, which was the majority of his stay. So he really wanted to go back to WCW where he could team with someone like Dustin and have great matches like he had against the Enforcers at the Clash. So I think it was more of a pride thing than anything at this point.
Now, what happened with that tag team championship? Steamboat and Dustin won it, but they're objecting because he was such a late entry. They were asking you to call a 900 number or something like that to get the actual outcome of the match. How did it work out? Is he the tag team co-holder right now?
They did end up retaining the titles. I should say that Steamboat and Rhodes are the new champions, and that will hold up. Obviously, one of the reasons that controversy was done was to sell the 900 number. Another reason was because Paulie Dangerously, as announced on today's TV, which was taped Wednesday, one day after the Clash, Paulie announced that he would also be pulling a switch on the rematch, which was supposed to be the Enforcers against Steamboat and Rhodes Thursday at the Omni. But instead, Paulie has decided to form a new team called, or I don't know that he has a name for him yet, but he's taken Larry Zbyszko out of the team and inserted Bobby Eaton, who has now turned back into a heel. So Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton will be challenging Steamboat and Rhodes for the tag team titles, which 2 weeks ago, nobody would have believed if you had said both Steamboat would be with Rhodes and Eaton would be with Anderson.
Now, with the return of Steamboat, there's also talk WCW may be getting Honky Tonk Man soon, and the Ultimate Warrior's contract with WWF, or the suspension, is up at the beginning of December.
Right.
A lot of rumors, Wade, this past week. The Ultimate Warrior could be in WCW by Starrcade, and a feud would be set up either with Sting or Lex Luger come January, February. Well, what's the status on that?
There's no question. When you say there's rumors concerning both of those names, especially Ultimate Warrior, you're not kidding. I mean, right now, everybody in wrestling is saying that Ultimate Warrior will be coming in at the beginning of the year. I would suspect nobody will be coming in, just from talking to people around the wrestling world, nobody will be coming in new until after Starrcade. I don't think Starrcade is conducive to introducing a new character, simply because it's kind of this massive tag team matches, and you really can't develop an issue there. And I don't think it's smart, and I think WCW realizes it, to introduce a character or a new wrestler of any type on a pay show, because the audience is much more limited than a free show. I suspect WCW is going to go very heavy after Ultimate Warrior as soon as Warrior's contract expires at the WWF. There's conflicting reports on when that is, and frankly, at this point, you can't believe really anything. The thing that you can say, though, which is kind of interesting, is that the WWF is not paying Ultimate Warrior, and again, his original 90-day suspension is up, as Rich said, at the beginning of December. If they don't rehire, or if they don't bring Ultimate Warrior back and start paying him money, I don't think the WWF could have any legal claim to him. You can't keep somebody under contract and not pay them and say that contract's valid. So I'd be very surprised if WCW, if they had the chance to get Ultimate Warrior, and Warrior is still under contract through, say, March, for instance, of 1992, I'd be very surprised if Ultimate Warrior, if WCW didn't sign Ultimate Warrior and take the chances legally.
If they were to bring the Warrior in, what do you think he goes, good or bad? And depending on that, who do you think they'd put him up against? If
I had to make a prediction right now, based on what I've heard, who I've talked to, and just what seems to make sense, I would say Ultimate Warrior will debut at the Clash in January for WCW, He'll sign a big 1-year guaranteed contract with him. And at the February pay-per-view, he'll defeat Lex Luger for the world title. One of the reasons I say that is because, as mentioned in the Wrestling Observer this week, Lex Luger's contract, which is good through March of '92, also specifies a limited number of matches he can wrestle without getting paid extra. And that number is going to really, it's coming quickly. I mean, it's going to come quicker than March at this rate. They're not happy with Lex Luger's attitude. His attitude has been worse than Sting's over the last couple of years, and he's very finicky. He's not a company man, let's put it that way. And I think that they would like to shift gears a little bit and take the belt off of him, simply because he's in such a powerful position as the champion.
Wade, are we going to see, I would say in 1992, as far as pro wrestling, a battle brewing again between the WWF and the WCW as a result of what's happening right now?
It's amazing because the last time I was on the show, I'd say 4 to 6 months ago here on the WFAN, it was like the death of WCW, the tombstone was being written, everything that we're doing wrong, it was depressing. Ric Flair hadn't yet jumped, and he was being misused by everyone, by the WCW, and it just, wrestling looked terrible. And now we're looking at 1992, the year that most fans predicted would be the worst year forever for wrestling because, Ric Flair against Hogan would be over and everything would be bad. And we're looking at Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania and a revival of WCW. I think it's going to be a real wrestling war. I think the WWF is going to see the signing of Rick Rude, maybe Honky Tonk Man, as you mentioned, Ultimate Warrior, and Rick Steamboat. And they're going to say, hey, we've got to get serious here because, signing Ric Flair, which I think they've misused Flair tremendously. I think they've turned him into just another WWF wrestler real quick. I think it'll be a real hot year, and I think, as Rich said, there'll be a feud starting.
21 minutes after 3 here on FAN. We'll get a little bit more in depth with that use or misuse of Ric Flair in the WWF with Wade Keller, of the editor of the Wrestling Torch, and Rich Mancuso here on FAN as our Wrestling Hour continues in just a bit.
For breaking sports news, nobody beats the Fan.
After 3 here on FAN, Jody Mack with Rich Mancuso and Wade Keller, editor of the Wrestling Torch. Wade, you mentioned that you think the WWF is misusing Ric Flair so far. How?
They, amazingly, and I didn't think it could be done, in a matter of 3 months have turned Ric Flair into the rebel wrestler who is going to, kick Hulk Hogan's butt to just another circus player. I mean, you see him on these Survivor Series interviews, and he's given his 15-second soundbite in between Ted DiBiase's and the Mounties and the Warlords. I mean, this guy's being portrayed as like, okay, this is just another wrestler we brought in. I understand they're calling him, the world champion. He has the nice gold belt and all that. But every time that, he comes out, it's Vince McMahon or Roddy Piper or Sean Mooney saying he's the so-called world champion or the self-proclaimed world champion. And to me, that's insulting. I think to a lot of Ric Flair fans or people who are followers of the sport, not necessarily fans, that's just untrue. I mean, Ric Flair never lost a title, and if you're going to bring him in as champion, don't call him so-called champion. Refer to him as a major champion for many years. I think they've discounted their most valuable asset to the point where he is just another wrestler in that group. If they would have portrayed this as Ric Flair being an outsider who's trying to challenge Hulk Hogan and continue to portray him as an outsider, have him do longer interviews, which is his style, and talk about how I'm not going to, have Ric Flair say, I refuse to participate in the Survivor Series because that's a cartoon clown show. I don't participate in that. I dedicate myself to singles wrestling. That type of thing would set him apart. And I think what they've done is really blended him in. I just think they've really lost a real big opportunity here to come off with something that seems different. And all the Flair Hogan and Flair Piper matches, interviews, and angles have just been, Ted DiBiase Part 2.
Yeah, Wade, and the houses with Hogan haven't been that good around the country yet either.
No.
what surprised me.
3 months ago, we thought it would have all been sellout.
Yeah.
And they've been 5,000 people in Oakland for the rematch.
Right.
Scary.
And what they're doing with the belt, of course, they're in litigation with WCW on that belt, and now you watch WWF show, and they're covering the belt up till they make a new one up for him. But the question here is, will he become the real world champion? Now, we have a lot of questions about the Survivor Series match with Hogan and The Undertaker and how Flair would fit into that picture. And I'm getting a lot of reports that Hogan will drop this title Wednesday evening, and Flair somehow will get that belt by January, and Hogan will defeat him to get it back at the WrestleMania.
Yeah.
What's the latest you've heard?
I think you've summed it up. I've heard everything under the sun. Sometimes contradictory stories. Nobody knows for sure because so many stories have been put out about what's actually going to happen Thursday and Tuesday, Survivor Series, and then the second pay-per-view in San Antonio. I would say at this point the most likely thing I see happening is Undertaker beating Hogan, and then Hogan defeating Undertaker, 6 days later. Then after that, I would predict Flair will win the title at Royal Rumble and then lose it at WrestleMania. I think Hulk Hogan would like to see, in the Hulk Hogan record book, I think Hulk Hogan would like to see Hulk Hogan pins Ric Flair on the biggest show of the year. And for the only way for that to mean anything is for Ric Flair to come in as champion. And so I think that's what's going to happen. Again, they might lose all faith in Ric Flair if houses continue to drop, and they'll drop. They'll have Flair in a secondary feud against Piper and try to aggressively get Ultimate Warrior back, and maybe go with Hulk Hogan against a heel Ultimate Warrior. Anything can happen between now and March, or actually April. I mean, it's a real long time for a lot of things to happen.
Is there a chance for someone else getting involved in the middle here, like a Randy Macho Man Savage? If he gets reinstated, could he be a short-term title holder and that go-between to get Flair the title?
It's possible. I doubt it, only because to have a go-between between Flair and Hogan, you need two of them, because Flair and Hogan are a heel and a face. So to have a go-between, somebody would have to defeat Hogan, like Undertaker, and then Randy Savage would have to beat Undertaker, and then Flair would have to beat Savage. That's not the WWF style. They don't like to confuse their fans. They like to have everything black and white, real simple and straightforward, and I just don't think that's their style.
Now, talking about Randy Savage, will he be reinstated? Do we have to wait till tomorrow night to see the special on the USA Network? Is he going to be wrestling in the Survivor Series?
I don't think he'll be wrestling in Survivor Series. In fact, I'm pretty sure. I think it's going to be a 3-on-4 match, from what I heard. Those were the definite plans. If they change their minds, that's also possible. What I expect is Savage to be back on the road full time come January with a major match at the Royal Rumble. But I think they're going to save that for house shows. They need something special on house shows because they run 2 a night. They need something besides Flair Hogan. And at this point, to keep Randy Savage off the Survivor Series and make people pay to see him at the house shows, I think is an important thing for them to do.
Wade, you mentioned that Ric Flair might say the Survivor Series is cartoon character-like. Are those your feelings as well? Do you think that it's not a good card? And how does this one compare to other ones gone by?
I think what I said was more putting words into Flair's mouth of what he might say than my feelings on it. I think it can be, just like I think any WWF card can be. The Survivor Series cards I have a problem with, only because it's real tough to distinguish issues. To me, it's the ultimate of the promoter just drawing names out of a hat, throwing them together, and putting together a card. I think most fans have, when you say Survivor Series, people think of a bunch of guys kind of blocking your view, standing around the ring, trading off wrestling. When you say most other pay-per-views, you think of a match, and matches sell tickets. So that's why I think they have Hogan versus Undertaker on top for the first time. They're main eventing with a singles match, because I think they realize the gimmick doesn't sell it anymore. I think the Survivor Series, though, could surprise the heck out of people. Past years, it's been pretty good. I think it could be great. I mean, if you look at the possibilities of one of the 8-man tag team matches, if it gets down to 4 men, Ric Flair and Ted DiBiase against Bret Hart and I believe would be the Mountie. I mean, that could be fantastic. Or Roddy Piper, not the Mountie. That could be just great action. I mean, that could be like Tag Team of the Year if they let them go about 20 minutes. The Rockers and the Bushwhackers against the Nasty Boys and Beverly's. If you take out the Bushwhackers right away, you've got a really good match there too. So I think the action will be great. I just don't think the up and down emotional type thing will be there as you find in, say, the Steamboat Dustin and Dustin Rhodes against Forcers match, where a real title is at stake.
Wade, unfortunately, we've run out of time. If there's anybody out there that wants to get a hold of you, get a copy of your publication, The Wrestling Torch, can you throw out an address or a telephone number for us?
Sure, absolutely. I'll throw out both. If people are interested as far as sending anything in, they can just drop me a line and mention they heard me on WFAN, and I'll send them out a couple sample issues. If they want to subscribe right away, it's $5 for 4 weekly issues. The address is Post Office Box 201-844. That's 6 digits, 201844, Minneapolis, Minnesota, 55420. And if they want to call and just leave their address on my answering machine, they're welcome to do so also, is any time of night or day. The number there is 612-854-4274. And the call will probably cost you less than a stamp.
Wade, always a pleasure. Thanks much for your contribution tonight.
Hope to be on again sometime. Thanks, Jody and
You
Rich.
got it.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Wade.
3:31 here on FAN. McMahon with you. John Clossy will join us. And then Rich Mancuso will return. We'll get to your wrestling letters. Got a week backlog. Somebody was out getting engaged last week, so we got a lot of letters to get to. Both your phone calls will get in as well at 718-937-6666. Wrestling Hour here on the Fan continues.
Sports Radio 66. The Fan. WFAN.
Late scores. Wayne Gretzky scored the first 3 goals of the game, and that's
Sports Radio 66. The Fan. WFAN. New York.
23 minutes in front of 4 here on the Fan. Gotten through the pile of wrestling letters. Some good questions, and we'll throw them Rich Mancuso's way in just a couple. And then if you didn't write to us this week, you can call us. 718-937-6666. Our regular telephone number for you wrestling fans. Rich and I will return with your questions. We open it up to you, the Fan, here on the Fan with our Wrestling Hour.
Hi, this is Telly Savalas. If you're like me and you love the good life...
The postman knocks and knocks here on our wrestling segment. Let's get Rich in to answer your questions. First up, Richie, is Andrew Silverstein, and he wants to know, after Bobby Heaton becomes a heel, do you think he'll continue to be a singles wrestler, or will he want to be a tag team guy?
I think he's going to team with Paul Lee as his manager, and with Arn Anderson. That's what it looks like.
That's right. That's what Wade Keller just gave us, and I think they're going to go with that for a while. Daryl No's got a question. What will be Mr. Perfect's role in the WWF in the next year until he returns?
Well, until that back gets better, he's going to be working with Ric Flair in the corner as the technical advisor. And him and Bobby Heenan will be doing this together, but you'll see more of Mr. Perfect and Bobby Heenan calling the shots for Ric Flair.
When Rick Steamboat came back to the WWF, did the WWF ever promise him some intercontinental title shots, big payday, or maybe a feud with Flair? What do you think the breakdown was there?
Well, I think it was exactly what Wade said. A lot of promises were made that they didn't fulfill. And I feel, just like Wade did, that Ricky saw things, and that's why he opted to get out of there. He was promised a big push, and you could see the way he was used against the Skinner, and that's just about it. That it was just becoming a thing, and I don't think it was a matter of time. I don't think it would have been if he had stayed, that he would have got the big push that he once had in the WWF.
That question came from Michael Frederick. This one from Glenn Rossi of Brooklyn. After Macho Man finishes feuding with Jake the Snake Roberts, who will he feud with next? The Undertaker? If not, who?
I believe it'll be The Undertaker. That most likely will be it. If the Jake Roberts feud with the Macho Man will last, it could probably culminate something at WrestleMania, no doubt about it. And then the Undertaker is right in the picture with him.
If Vince McMahon pushes the World Bodybuilding Federation and it is successful, would Lou Ferrigno ever enter the WWF?
I doubt it, and based on the way that since the WBF is almost a year old now, and there's been no action with those stars in the WWF at all, and I don't think Vince McMahon's intentions from the beginning of this were to mix the two together, except cross-plug it on his wrestling TV shows.
And Ferrigno's getting up there in age anyway. Here's a good one. Jay Saul writes, how did Cactus Jack and Jerry Sags of the Nasty Boys lose their teeth?
They take some brutal punishment, those two. And a couple of flying drop kicks and running outside the ring a lot did it to them. Or they saw the wrong dentist.
Freddie Esposito wants to know, is there any chance of Jim Neidhart being reinstated for the Survivor Series?
Well, he's injured and he's out of action. What I think is going to happen is that Neidhart will make an appearance at ringside with his new tag team partners, Owen Hart. They're going to be called the New Foundation, the New Hart Foundation. Right after the Survivor Series, they will debut like that. So I think that you'll see Neidhart come at ringside somehow at Survivor Series and bring Owen Hart in there with him.
Mitzi from Brooklyn writes, has McMahon finally lost all common sense? With so many young kids in his audience, how dare he ever have or suggest the slightest hint of an electrocution with Bret Hart having water thrown on him and then getting zapped by the Mountie? Used to be snakes and coffins, but that wasn't bad enough. Now it's water and electricity.
Yeah, and, you know, what happened on the Superstars of Wrestling yesterday with Jake getting bit by the snake, rather Randy Savage getting bit by the snake, that was a bad, ugly scene. They had to censor it on television, and they showed a number of kids crying, really crying very bad about what was happening, and it was an ugly scene. Yeah, and I kind of think Vince McMahon's gone a little too far on that one with the Mountie and Hart, and this one with Jake and Randy.
What are the real reasons that NBC dropped Saturday night's main event? Ratings were higher than reruns of Saturday Night Live, which is shown in its place now. CBS picked up the WCW show at 12:30 Saturday nights. Is this due to the departure of former NBC president Brandon Tartikoff?
No, it had a lot to do with money, just like WCW now on CBS and not on PIX. There's a big difference in money. And NBC wanted to charge the rates to be on at that time for them at a much higher value. And I think WWF, they've lost, believe it or not, they've lost some money the last year or so. And that had a lot to do with them pulling it off. And then there was also the fact that WWF was talking to Fox Network about putting these specials on there on Saturday night. And the combination of both pulled them off.
The Pro Boys, Tom and Tony Pro, have a couple of questions. Why doesn't the WWF get a good guy female manager / wrestler to feud with Sensational Sherry?
There's nobody really around except Missy Hyatt, I would say, and Missy Hyatt had her chance in the WWF a few years ago, and she failed in that attempt. And Sherry is just Sherry. You really don't need anybody else to go with her. She's the only female around the WWF. She does a good job with it. She riles up the crowd. They don't need anyone else.
When a promotion decides to break up a tag team, how is it decided who plays the heel role and who goes babyface?
Well, that's the promoter's discretion. In the case with the Rockers, which will be coming up shortly, between Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, it's a case of these two just not being able to get along for real outside the ring. Who's to be the heel, who's to be the good guy, that's up to the promoter's discretion.
Next up, Rich the Bulldog fan. Why is Hogan versus Flair the main event at the Garden a week from now, since today's economy will cause a half-empty arena?
Well, the advance for the Garden show next Saturday night is excellent. I think it's going to be the one of a few that will sell out around the country between Hogan and Flair. And, you know, I don't think it has anything to do with the economy. If anything, this match was hoped to boost the gates in the WWF, and New York gets a shot at it like everyone else. The question is, will Hogan have the belt when he goes into the Garden next Saturday night?
Andy Siegel from Flushing wants to know if you think Macho Man Savage will be in the Survivor Series. Wade Keller said he doesn't think so. How about yourself?
I don't think so, but I think he'll make an appearance, and he's wrestling as Mr. Madness. Everyone knows that's him. In fact, it'll be in Nassau Coliseum here in New York, December 13th, teaming up with Hacksaw Jim Duggan as Mr. Madness. He'll be reinstated, but not for the Survivor Series afterwards.
Another couple of questions from Glenn Rossi. When Mr. Perfect comes back from his injury, will he go immediately after Bret Hart's Intercontinental belt?
Depends if Bret's still the champion. I think he will be. And, no, I don't think so. I think what eventually will happen here, if Ric Flair's status is still, if he's still active heavily in the WWF, you could see a feud develop between Ric Flair and Bret and Mr. Perfect, which I think would be, that's a great match on paper too.
Yeah, but who goes babyface?
Oh, Mr. Perfect.
So that probably answered the second question. If he comes back, will he have a manager? Usually, babyface wrestlers don't have managers. Those are only for heels.
Right.
Up next is Jay Miller. He wants to know, is Steve Austin and Lady Blossom married?
No, they're not.
Okay, and the last question has to do with me. Congratulations, Jody, on the engagement. Is the future Mrs. Macdonald a wrestling fan? She's a sports fan and will settle for that.
I'd like to know if that wedding is going to be like the Macho Man and Elizabeth.
Oh, we'll put theirs to shame. 13 minutes in front of 4 here on FAN. Jody Mack with you. Rich is on the lines with us. We're going to the phones for your wrestling calls at 718-937-6666.
Got the hots for sports? Then turn on the fan and get the scoop. Sports Radio 66, WFAN, New York.
Sports Radio 66, the fan, WFAN, New York.
11 minutes in front of 4 here on FAN. Jody Mack and Rich Mancuso on the phone lines with you. Let's get to him. Rich, George from Jersey, you're on FAN.
Jody, Rich, how you doing tonight?
Good.
Okay, George.
I'm so confident that I know exactly what's going to happen at the Survivor Series, the December 3rd card, and the Royal Rumble, that I'm willing to bet you guys dinner on what's going to happen.
Well,
A, I don't bet anybody but Rich, and B, Rich has got to pay me before he pays anybody else, so there will be no wagering, but go ahead with your scenario anyway.
Okay, I have Hulk Hogan will drop the title to The Undertaker, and at the Survivor Series, he's going to attempt to put Hogan in the coffin, and Sergeant Slaughter will run in, save Hogan from The Undertaker and Paul Bearer. Then I'll set up December 3rd with Sergeant Slaughter wrestling The Undertaker for the heavyweight title, Sergeant Slaughter winning the belt from The Undertaker, and then at the Royal Rumble he'll lose the title to Ric Flair, which sets up WrestleMania 9, I believe, and where Hogan wins the title from Flair.
Sergeant Slaughter being the go-between, eh?
You know why I don't think that, George? Only because Slaughter still hasn't been accepted by the fans, and he's going to be on Duggan's team replacing Neidhart. And I think the Slaughter is going to be going into a feud with Colonel Mustafa, and you'll see that out of the Survivor Series. That's why I don't agree with you on that, George.
But wouldn't you think if he saved Hogan from going into the coffin that the fans would accept him right there?
Yeah, but also you could see the Macho Man. I mean, we don't know if the reinstatement will happen tomorrow night. So it could be the Macho Man who
George,
does
what
it.
made you say Slaughter?
Well, because on Blackjack Brown's hotline, I asked one of them, and they said Slaughter would get the title at December 3rd, and you would run in there. The guy said he was perfectly sure.
I think it's all speculation right now.
George, only time will tell. Thanks for the call. Phil from Farmingdale, you're on FAN.
Hey, Jody, Rich, good morning
How
tonight.
you doing?
Before I ask my question, I just want to say the smoke is no joke, and that Cooper did prove my fact that Holyfield is indeed a punk. But that's besides the point. I want to know when Perfect's going to have the gold around his waist again.
Don't know. Depends on the status of this injury and see if he's well enough to wrestle in 1992. Right now, just look for him to be on Ric Flair's corner. And what I think is going to happen is that Flair and Perfect will eventually feud.
Kyle from Long Island next year on FAN. Hi, Kyle.
How you doing, guys? Good morning, Jody. Good morning, Rich.
Guy.
I was wondering, with the return of Scott Steiner at ringside, are they going to be teaming up and going after the world titles again?
Definitely. Now that, Rick and Scott are both healthy, and they both had their title shots with Luger and company now. I think that this tag team is going to be reinforced again and make a shot at the belts.
Okay, that's great. Number 2, I heard that Mr. Madness is supposed to be taking over for Sid Vicious. Is there any truth to this?
That he's going to be taking over?
Yeah, he's going to be taking
in the Survivor Series match?
Yeah.
If he's reinstated, we all know it's Randy Savage.
Right.
He's been wrestling as Mr. Madness already around the country. So that's a good possibility. But I got to go with Wade Keller said earlier. I think it's just going to be a 4-on-3 situation.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
Kyle, thank you for the call. Vince from Brooklyn. Oh, no, excuse me, from the Bronx. Vince, you're on FAN.
Yes. Why can't Bruce the Bar Pig fight anymore?
Who's that?
Bruce Pig. Why can't he fight anymore?
Well, he's got those metal plates in his head as a result of that severe surgery last July 4th. And the doctors have recommended that he don't go into physical action heavily again because it's detrimental to him. And that's the reason. Now, if it had been otherwise, you'd see Beefcake wrestling now.
And is Lady Blossom finished with, Son and Steve?
What? Excuse me?
Is Lady Blossom finished with Son and Steve because Paulie's manager now?
Jody, I can't
Is Lady Blossom finished with Stunning Steve?
She will be eventually. They're going to phase her out of the promotion, yeah.
Vince, thanks for the call. Lenny from Astoria, you're on FAN.
Hey, what's up, dudes? How you doing?
How you doing?
All right. Hey, Rich, I got 3 questions for you, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Number 1, whatever happened to the 1979 WWF Rookie of the Year, Steve Travis?
Steve Travis was severely injured in a match about a year ago and has not been able to return to action.
But, what promotion is he wrestling for?
Oh, he's not wrestling for anybody at the moment.
But who was he wrestling for that he got injured?
At the time, he was wrestling for the WWF.
Okay, and I got a couple of, who are they? Who are the Patriot from the GWF, and also who's Arachna Man?
Okay, the Patriots, one of them was Del Wilkes, as we all know. Okay, and what was your other question?
Who's that new guy they have in WCW, Arachna Man?
Oh, a young star that just came out of the independent ranks, and you're going to be seeing a lot of him in the future.
And who's that?
Well, they're not going to reveal his identity. I don't do that.
All right, and one more thing. I have a few guys that I want to mention their names, and in your own opinion, I'm not going to say whether or not you know for sure or not, but I'd just like to give your opinion, yes or no, if they're on steroids or not, okay? All right, Lex Luger?
Well, you can determine that yourself.
All right, Sting?
Well, if he's not gonna say about one, he's not gonna say it about any, Lenny.
It's a tender question. I don't know these guys personally, and again, it's an issue that it's going to resurface, and I'm not at liberty to say yes or no if they're on steroids or not.
Mark from Brooklyn joins us here on FAN.
Well, guys, I'd like to know, I thought Sid Justice was going to eventually somewhere down the line be the fairhead Hulk Hogan replacement of the WWF. What happened?
Well, eventually I'm sure he will be, unless they can get Lex Luger to come in with, if he keeps squabbling with WCW. He'll make the move, I'm sure. But basically, with everything's changed right now, and everything's on hold because of his bicep injury. And I'm sure that sometime in 1992, and also what Hogan's decision is going to be whether he continue in this game or not, that justice will prevail and be the new champ.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call. Tom from Long Island's on FAN. Hi, Tom.
Hey, guys. Good. I'm going to be at the Garden the week from today.
Yeah.
I want to know, what do you think they're going to do with Hogan and Flair?
Well, if Hogan isn't the champion, of course, the match will still go on, and you'll probably end up seeing a disqualification route with the match.
Yeah. What are the other matches that night?
I believe you have the Mountie going against not IRS. I think the Mountie is on the card. I don't have the whole card in front of me, but I would suggest if you don't have a ticket to get one because it's going to be a good show.
Yeah, I got one. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Tommy, thank you. Jordan from Great Neck, you're on the Fan.
How's it going, guys? Quick question. The guy before me sort of asked it already about Hogan being the champion at the Garden next week. It's kind of hard to picture him not being the champion because this is the match that everyone's has been wanting to see. Flair versus Hogan at the Garden. So it's kind of hard to picture McMahon not giving Hogan the title for such a big match.
Yeah, it's a good point, but